I want to say you've outdone yourself. Congrats.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
For the many years I've been following you, it's been very interesting to see your career and your work evolve. And so my first question in relation to that is, do you challenge yourself to improve every time? Do you go into each movie as your own chance to make a difference, as your own chance to sort of, not one-up yourself, but sort of look back at what you did and say, here's something new, here's something different, here's something...
I'd say a little bit, but it's also the material, you know, that shapes you into the thing.
Right.
Because it's like... I like irony in the movies a little bit, right?
Right.
And so someone asked me, like, well, I think all your films are ironic, but I've seen this Superman film and it doesn't seem that ironic. And I go, that's what's ironic about it. Is that, you know, it's a movie about Superman and it's not ironic at all. Right? That's awesome, in my opinion.
Right.
You know, I said, like, that Superman is the most realistic movie I've ever made, and it's about Superman, says something about the way I see movies and reality or whatever. You know, it's not like, it also says, like, you know, and it's not like people say, like, well, like, for instance, if it's Sucker Punch or Watchmen or whatever, like, oh, he likes stylized, he can only do like a stylized world because, you know, that's all he knows how to do. I hope that when they see those films in the future, they're like, oh, he's doing that on purpose. It's not like, you know what I mean? It makes those. Hopefully it shines a light on those other films and says, like, oh, that was by design. It wasn't like just random, you know, shot making.
Well, of course.
Oh, but you know.
Well, do you hear the criticisms and do you take those to heart in any way, or do you just sort of blow them off?
I try not to change my point of view based on the criticisms, but I do look at the criticisms in regard to the work and try and see if maybe my thesis wasn't clear when I set out to make the film. Like, I always have a point of view, and I always want the movie to say something, and sometimes I check that and say, like, wow, were people getting it? Like, you know, with Sucker Punch, I feel like a lot of people just, you know, when I look at criticism of the film, whether or not people like the movie is different, but the why they didn't like it is what really is disturbing compared to, it's one thing to say, like, oh, I don't like that idea. It's another thing to, like, just say, I don't like it because of this reason, when I'm like, oh my lord, like, okay, I blew it because, like, they're just not even understanding what I'm trying to say. You know? That's the tricky part.
Interesting. Don't take this question the wrong way, but who do you make movies for? Is it your family? Is it your kids? Is it fans? Is it as mass audience as you can get?
You know, I have not changed. I really make the movies for myself. I really, really do.
For no one else, or just sort of like what you ultimately want to see in them?
Yeah, I think so.
As a fan yourself,
what I want to see, yeah, like you only have the benchmark of yourself. Like, if you ever try and make a movie for someone other than yourself, I feel like you're gonna blow it, because you don't know how anyone else is gonna feel. So, like, you know, you go, okay, do I find that emotionally real? Do I find that interesting? Is that the Krypton I want to go to? Is that the Superman I want to see fight? You know, those are the questions you ask yourself constantly. And I think once you, if you're constantly answering yes to that, then you'll end up the film will end up being more interesting to you. And ultimately, the film being interesting to you allows you to make the movie better because you're interested. If you make it for someone else over a 2-year period, like, you're just gonna, like, not give a shit at some point, because you're just like, I don't care. This is not my movie, you know. I don't care about this movie because I made it for someone else, you know.
I imagine that's a very hard thing to do in Hollywood, though, is to keep your vision clear with so much collaboration, with so much going on, with so many other people in the mix.
It really depends on the project. Like, for instance, it was hard on Guardians, you know, where I feel like what ended up happening on that movie was they did end up asking me, like, this is for kids, right?
Interesting.
And I gotta honestly say that I knew it was for kids, but I didn't want to make it for kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened to that movie. It did get, like, second guessed at the end and turned more into a movie for kids. Because my point of view is, like, I can think like a child if I want. Like, I I have that enthusiasm for
Right.
movies and what I think is cool.
Right.
You don't need to. You people, you, the collective you, don't need to try and second guess me and go, what is? This is what we think a kid would like.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, a song or
Right.
whatever, you know. Then you're just like, okay, whatever.
Right.
I mean, and so that part was hard, and also animation is slow. You know, and like you know,
Right.
you
Every
make
step of the
moves.
process,
Yeah. But I think other than that, I've really been lucky with the movies, as far as like
Well, with Man of
they
Steel,
just are. You know, like I
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
because I feel like at the beginning I'm just like I think with Man of Steel because I understood the movie. I'm a fan of Superman, so I was always going to make that movie,
Right.
right?
Was this sort of your vision? Like years ago, you knew you would make this movie.
Well, you know, look, they asked me if, after 300, they asked me if I was
Wow.
interested in making a Superman movie,
Okay.
and I said, I was working on Watchmen at the time, in my mind, and that's a hard jump,
Right.
right?
But the Watchmen's a big jump too, though.
Well, but I was a big fan of Watchmen, but I mean, it's just as far as like, I'm deep in Watchmen, I'm
Right,
deep in
right, right.
deconstructing like superheroes. It's like, hey, do you want to make a Superman movie? It's like, well, I'm about to tear him down.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm going to kill him.
Right.
I'm not interested in fixing him or making him interesting.
Right.
Like, he's the enemy right now. And then, like, you finish Watchmen, and like, because I was a fan of comic books, also it's sort of the evolved version of comic books, right? Watchmen, right?
Right.
It's I'm like an intellectual, like, who likes comic books, so I like Watchmen. Right? And I'm gonna make that into a movie to justify my love of comic books or whatever.
Right.
And then, once that's out of your system, though, I gotta say, you know, there's a hollowness to the end of Watchmen, right?
Right.
Especially in sort of geekdom, you know, like you finish Watchmen and you're like, oh,
There's no hope for anyone.
there's no hope. Like, is there a way to like, isn't there a way to love, is it okay to love this?
Right.
And I think that's the relationship I had with Superman in making the film, was I really wanted to love Superman. You know, I wanted Superman to be okay.
Right.
Because he represents so much. He's the first. He's the greatest superhero.
Right.
He's the top of the pyramid, especially in a DC universe. In my opinion, in all of comics, he's certainly the first, and I would argue that he's, you know, the godfather in every genre of comic book. And to make him work is to make that whole world, legitimize that whole world. And so the responsibility I had on myself, and I don't think moviegoers will feel that or see that, but for me, the responsibility was like, make him work, and you're justifying sort of the why of comic books or the why of graphic storytelling and all that. I know it sounds heady, but
No, but I understand what you're going
Yeah.
for. I want to ask, how hard was it to keep the 20-minute opening Krypton sequence in the movie and to have that much time there?
it wasn't hard because it was 30 minutes.
Right, but it could have been 5, it could have
I
been
guess
2.
so.
It could have been your opening credit montage.
Yeah, no, we always really intended a giant Kryptonian sequence. And look, early in the process, you know, when we would talk to the producers in the studio, there was discussions of like, hey, maybe we should like, you know, break it up and make it flashbacks or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, no, you got to be in it. Like when the pod crashes into the Kansas and you cut to that fishing boat, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, fuck, oh,
Right,
that's
right.
right. This movie, right when you think the movie's about that,
Right.
you know, I'm in the movie for 20 minutes. I guess it's this movie, right? Like you forget. Like when Jor-El and Zod are fighting, you don't even, it's not even in your head that, oh yeah, we're going to be on Earth. Superman's going to be in this movie.
Right.
Eventually. Like, you could think it's a 45-minute movie about Krypton, and then maybe you see Baby Cal, and that's where we like cut.
Right.
You know, we see Henry in one shot.
Right.
You know, where he flies. The end.
Right.
You know, it could be. You know, that's a cool movie.
Well, that's not the complete movie.
No, it's not. But I do feel like the grounding of it, of the reality of Krypton makes the movie better.
Of course, well, it sets up such a big piece to it.
And then when Russell comes back and all
Yeah,
that,
exactly,
like, you have that, right?
There's so much more to it.
Yeah.
Well, the last thing is I have to wrap up, but is this your Star Wars calling card? Was this a way to say, look what I can pull off?
If someone were to see the movie and say, like, dang, this guy can make a sci-fi movie, that's cool. But, yeah, I like to think that I've kind of did that before this, but yeah,
Okay.
I think so in some regard.
Okay. Cool.
From a purely sci-fi standpoint.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
From a world, from a universe
Yeah,
standpoint.
yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks.
Awesome.